So this particular cutting board is going to be 40 inches long. Now on the rough cuts, I'm cutting them to about 44.5 inches, and that's to allow for a little extra waste to be cut off once the boards are planed down, because they will leave some sniping on the board about 2 inches from each end. That way I can cut that off without having to try to sand it all down. They've also requested that the board be 2 inches thick. So the strips that I'm cutting here, I'm cutting them just over 2¼ inches thick. So that gives me a little playing room for joining the edges and also planing them down to final thickness at the end. So after I jointed one face and one edge of each strip, I ran them through the planer to get them all down to a uniform thickness. And by the time that was done, I ended up with about 7/8 inch thick strips, which gave me just over 22-inch wide cutting board, which I will trim down later to get exactly 22 inches. Now here, after the strips have all been planed down to thickness, it was time for the glue up. Now I had to work fairly quick with that many strips to avoid the glue starting to harden or gum up on me and become useless before I could get the clamps on them. Now after the panels had sat overnight and the glue had a chance to dry, it was time to plane them down to their final thickness. I did so by placing the jointed edge face down on the planer bed and taking shallow passes through the planer to get the top side cleaned up, and then flipped them over and ran the bottom side through it to clean them up as well, until I got down to the 2-inch mark that I needed to make this cutting board. So it was also requested that I match a board that was in the house currently, and part of that process was rounding over all the edges and corners so there were no sharp edges facing out. I made a temporary router jig to be able to cut a juice or blood groove into the cutting board, and I'm using a 3/4 inch bit that will end up being about 3/8 inch deep all the way around the edge of the board. I'm not going to show all the sanding process, but I will tell you what I did is I started with 80 grit on the palm sander, then moved up to 120 grit, and then 220 grit, and then after it was oiled, 320 and 400 grit respectively. Now, this is always my favorite part of building any cutting board, and that's applying the oil and seeing the grain and the color of the wood popping out and just coming alive as it's being applied. And you can see it right here. It went from dry, boring looking wood, but as soon as that oil hit it and started getting rubbed in, you see all these different colors pop up, and it just gives each cutting board its own unique personality and look to it, and it's a very satisfying process.